Well, I thank the Speaker, and I want to first recognize and commend someone who's been working in my office most recently as Director of Operations, Corinne Scalise, who is unfortunately going to be leaving us after tomorrow, her last day here in the office, but she's been a wonderful part of our office. She's heading over to work with the former Vice President and do some work with his organization. We will all miss her. I know the scheduling operation is always complex. I know the floor staff will miss working with her. She's been fantastic. She'll be joining another staffer of mine, Jonah Wendt, who was with me from the time I first ran for office in the summer of 2018 all the way until December, who also went to go work in the Vice President's organization. It means I need to have a word with the Vice President about taking my staff, but I'm very delighted to have them going working with them and want to thank them for their service. And I've got the benefit of Corinne for the next 24 hours. So I want to thank her and thank Jonah and all of my staff and all of the great staff on the Hill. I mean, maybe almost all of the staff. It depends on the day. But I joke as a former staffer, but we can't do this without our staff. We can't do it without the floor staff, all the great employees here that keep this place operating. And they tolerate us when we're holding the floor open late and forcing votes and, I don't know, maybe giving a long speech on the floor of the House, which occasionally I might shorten just to make sure they can get home in time to have a reasonable night. But I am thankful, ever thankful for their support and work. I would note that my colleague from Texas was just complaining allegedly or about the alleged weakness of the Texas grid. Well, the only reason that there's any weakness to the grid is because we've had radical leftists embracing power schemes that have been funding our enemies in China and trying to promote a radical leftist agenda with unreliable energy. That's the truth. Promoting windmill power in Texas, which on a windless day, oddly enough, hard to predict this, I know, doesn't produce a whole lot of power. Or solar power, which on a cloudy day doesn't, I know, again, hard to predict, doesn't produce a whole lot of power. So I don't know, if you have a deep freeze in the state of Texas that shuts down the windmill capacity and you have some other events going on, like some frozen gas lines, you end up having some difficulties. When you have had a war on reliable power, as my radical leftist colleagues have been doing for as long as I can remember, you end up with problems with the grid. And it's not just in Texas, it's nationwide. We've had rolling blackouts in California. Texas has been able to stave off those kinds of blackouts because we're trying to fight through the federal mandates and the laws that come out of this body and the regulations that come out of the federal government that prevent us from being able to provide the power we need for the people of Texas. Just last year, my colleague from Texas joined with my radical leftist colleagues on the other side of the aisle to advance the so-called Inflation Reduction Act, which has done none of that, and which, by the way, is empowering China. And by the way, my colleague talked about enriching corporations. Well, guess what the Inflation Reduction Act does? By subsidizing massive companies. 90% of the subsidies go to billion-dollar corporations. That's the truth. My colleagues on the other side of the aisle like to pretend they're doing something green when what they're doing is enriching fat cats in big corporations, sending money to China to build solar panels rather than clean-burning natural gas. We voted today to advance a bill so that we can have liquefied natural gas being exported out of Texas. My colleagues on the other side of the aisle don't want to do that. They want to make us weaker. They want to hurt our economy. They want to make Russia more powerful. They want to undermine Ukraine, even as they complain that we're not taking more borrowed money or more taxpayer money to give it to Ukraine to fund a war that doesn't have a mission. They want to undermine our ability to help Ukraine with liquefied natural gas. That's the truth. That's the actual facts of what's going on right now, because my colleagues on the other side of the aisle are trying to advance a radical notion of unicorn energy where we can have endless unreliable energy and then wonder why the grid might have a problem. Why aren't we building nuclear power? Why aren't we building more natural gas, which we have in abundance in this country? Why aren't we exporting more liquefied natural gas? Around the world, half the world doesn't have access to reliable energy. 3 billion people live in what we would call energy poverty. Why don't we export our energy so we can lift people out of poverty? The fact is, China has 1,100 coal-fired plants, probably more than that now. They're building 2 a week. They're producing the vast majority of the CO2 going to the atmosphere. Meanwhile, my colleagues on the other side of the aisle want to declare war on the internal combustion engine here in the United States. And if you got rid of every car in America and replaced it with an electric vehicle, you would impact CO2 by about, 2%, maybe, worldwide. If you got rid of every single car in America. Meanwhile, the average EV costs $16,000 more than an internal combustion engine automobile. The price of used cars is going up. We now have a mandate by this administration that the EVs are going to need to be 2/3 of the fleet by 2032, which means every American out there watching this, you are going to spend more for automobiles. If you live in the cold, your battery is going to take longer to charge. If you plug it in at your house, your electricity bill is going to double or triple because it uses as much electricity as your air conditioner. Yet my leftist colleagues think that's okay. And they've said so, sitting in the Rules Committee, they've said so here on the floor. That's just the price of fighting climate change, they say. Except it's not going to actually fight what they claim is what they want to stop. Because around the world, other countries are producing CO2 in mass quantities. We're producing CO2 at our 1990 levels because of innovation, because of clean burning natural gas. Yes, from Texas. I have no problem with that. But when my colleagues come down and say, oh, you're enriching corporations, they leave out that dirty little secret that we just passed a $1 trillion bill that the American people will have to pay for to subsidize our enemies, to subsidize billion-dollar corporations, and undermine the very hardworking American family who wants to buy a car, the plumber who wants to have a truck, the family who wants to be able to have 2 vehicles to get around in, but they can't afford them anymore because we're regulating them out of existence. We're making it where you can't even afford it. And then we're adding all sorts of requirements, like kill switches. Can you believe this? Kill switches. If your eyes dart because you're allegedly under the influence of something, your car is going to shut down. All right, so what if it's wrong? What if it's 10 below zero? What if you're across a railroad track? You're going to have cars that just shut down, a kill switch. The government telling you you cannot get a car that doesn't have the expensive technology built into it to determine whether or not you might be under the influence. That's what we're doing to people. We're going to make that car twice as expensive, and we're going to make it to where they might be unable to move their vehicle. This is unconscionable what we're doing. I had a friend who went to go replace a windshield the other day. It was like $1,500 because it has some technology in it so you can see the speedometer in the glass and some other stuff. I mean, who cares? Good grief. What do I just want to have a windshield? It used to be like $200. We've made everything more expensive. We're making everything so regulated that you can't possibly afford it. You want to know why families are struggling? Because of that. My colleagues live in unicorn land. Like there are no consequences to regulation. There's no consequences to writing checks that we can't afford, funding and subsidizing big corporations all the time to advance their radical agenda. They act like there's no consequences to open borders. The fact of the matter is we have a problem in this town, and it's not, as I think I saw the Capitol Hill reporter Jake Sherman report today, that somehow, Republicans are in disarray. It's been the least effective Congress in history. Well, let me just tell you something about the people I represent. They don't want this body to keep passing more laws and spending more money for the sake of it. They want us to actually stand up and fight for them. And standing up and fighting for them means doing something different. Because I promise you, that reporter and every other Capitol Hill reporter would judge success as continuing the status quo that has delivered us $34 trillion in debt, has delivered us stacks of laws that nobody can even count. Literally, I looked up the Department of Justice to count all the criminal statutes. They tried to do a study in the 80s and they ran out and they just gave up because they couldn't find all the laws. Yet we keep passing more laws. Just today, we passed more programs. We passed more stuff on the floor. People are, Chip, why are you always voting no? Because we're $34 trillion in debt and we have reams of regulations and reams of laws. What are those things doing to make the average American family's life better? That's the truth. And I got to say something as I'm prone to do, being critical on a bipartisan basis or a nonpartisan basis. The defense complex, the people that want to scare you to death that we're all going to die. Yes, there are bad enemies in the world and we need to prepare to defend them, and I'll talk more about that in a minute. But we have a problem in this town that we will always spend more money because under the fear that people are going to say that we're going to be blown up or somebody's going to attack us. Let me quote our former General Dwight Eisenhower, former President Dwight Eisenhower, in his farewell address in 1961. He said, "In the councils of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex." I want to remind you, this is 1961. This is 63 years ago, almost to the day. "The potential for the disastrous rise of misplaced power exists and will persist. We must never let the weight of this combination endanger our liberties or democratic processes. We should take nothing for granted. Only an alert and knowledgeable citizenry can compel the proper meshing of the huge industrial and military machinery of defense with our peaceful methods and goals, so that security and liberty may prosper together." That is not happening today, ladies and gentlemen. We saw it on full display this week, right here in this body. We saw it in full display because we were trying on a bipartisan basis to pass reform of the so-called, or as it is known, the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, what we call as FISA. The fact is that FISA has been abused. Section 702 of FISA is a particular provision designed for us to collect information abroad, to look outward, in order to try to stop a future 9/11. That's its general purpose. And it plays an important role in doing that. We've gathered intelligence and been able to use it to prevent bad actors. But the fact is, there's been enormous abuses. The ODNI reported that the FBI conducted an estimated 204,090 United States person queries, that's 559 per day, in 2022. An NSA analyst searched for the communications of two individuals the analyst had met on an online dating service. The government conducted a batch query for over 19,000 donors to a congressional campaign. Ladies and gentlemen, that is your intelligence community and your FBI that is abusing laws designed to look abroad to stop foreign enemies, and they're looking at you. They're using the power of government to surveil you, the American people. That is wrong. It is why we have a Fourth Amendment. It is why we have rules about warrants. When I was a former federal prosecutor, I would have loved to have unfettered access to information. I had a bad guy, he was sitting there, I had a phone, the cop had the phone, and I had him on other stuff, but that guy had a phone, and he pulled the information off the phone and had guns and drugs and pictures that were incriminating. He didn't get a warrant. Well, the fact that we'd had him for something else didn't mean that he still didn't need a warrant to look at his phone. That matters. I couldn't use any of it. Couldn't give it to law enforcement to go look at the house or go try to track down what was on the phone. And you know what? We're a better country for it. Because there were other tools to go after bad guys. I was able to put that bad guy in jail for a considerable number of years. But we weren't going to violate the Fourth Amendment to go further. Yet we violate the Fourth Amendment every single daggum day against the American people in the name of foreign intelligence. Why would we do that? We do it because it's easy. This week, we had the opportunity to bring forward legislation, bipartisan. When do you ever see Jim Jordan and Jerry Nadler hugging each other in agreement in the Rules Committee or in the Judiciary Committee? But they were. We had bipartisan agreement, a 35-2, I think, was the vote bill out of the Judiciary Committee, to say we're going to continue to allow the 702 tools to be able to go after bad guys abroad, but we are going to protect people here at home. We're going to use the Constitution. We're going to require that you have warrants to be able to get information, search databases on American people. We haven't been able to bring it to the floor. You know why? Because the intelligence world, including some on our own intelligence committee, both sides of the aisle, the intelligence world that have worked over in the executive branch in the CIA, DNI, DOD, FBI, they all said, whoa, 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 you can't do that or bad things will happen. It's always behind this cloak, this veil. Oh, trust us. We see all the classified information. We know all the truth. You will be in danger. You will be endangered if you pass something like a demand that you have a warrant to get information on an American citizen. Imagine that. If I walked around Washington, D.C. with a dog sniffer from every house going up down the streets of Capitol Hill or through Georgetown or up through Northwest or Northeast or any part of this city, how many times do you think I'd run across narcotics? I can't do that, and we're not supposed to do that. Of course, law enforcement wants every tool it can have to go after bad guys. It makes their job easier. But the Constitution says, for a reason, you can't do that. Every single one of us are mortified about September 11th and every other terrorist attack on our soil. But we should not give power to the federal government and the tyranny that can then be deployed upon the American people because we're afraid of what might happen. Freedom matters. It's why we exist. Yet here we are, an opportunity with this bill that is expiring to make reforms that can protect the American people, and we're not going to do it. Token fixes that'll make modest improvements, but without the full protection of the Constitution wrapped around the American citizens. This body, the People's House, should do better. I believe there is a full, strong majority of this body that would want to do that. We should bring that bill to the floor, and if my colleagues want to vote against it or take down the rule, make them go explain it to the American people. That's what we ought to do. I don't mind defending my votes. Just last week, I was forced to vote on a suspension of the rules, a vote to give clean funding to Israel. Well, God bless America. I support Israel, and I want to stand shoulder to shoulder with Israel. But I cannot go back to the people of Texas and say I'm going to go send a $17.6 billion check, even to our best friends, when we have not secured the border of the United States and we are not paying for it. We cannot continue to write checks with borrowed money. We will not have a United States of America remaining to stand next to Israel. It won't exist. We won't have a dollar that's strong enough. It's not just FISA. It's what we saw just unfold in the Senate when they passed cynically taking out border security, sending over $60 billion for Ukraine, additional funding for Israel, a total package of almost $90 billion. By the way, that $60 billion for Ukraine, do you know how much our entire budget is for the United States Marine Corps? $53 billion. Was one penny of that $60 billion paid for? No. Just printed money. We're printing money every year to the tune of $2 trillion just to keep the lights on. And we're going to go write another $60 billion check to Ukraine? God bless the people of Ukraine. I want them to push back. I want them to win. I want them to hold the line and preserve their country. But coming to us to write them blank checks is not a strategy. And the Senate sent us over a $90 billion bill with $60 billion for Ukraine, billions for Taiwan, billions for Israel. And they do so without any mission defined. We've gotten multiple different missions told to us by the administration. They have no clarity of what we're trying to achieve there. Are we funding something that might result in victory for NATO, for Ukraine, for the United States? Or are we funding a, yet again, never-ending conflict and a proxy war that none of the people voting for this are going to go put themselves in danger for, after we've already spent $113 billion, by the way, unpaid for? You noticing a common theme here? Almost everything we do around here is unpaid for. Hell, if you look at our annual tax revenues, which in 2022, by the way, were as high as they've ever been, those tax revenues only pay for mandatory spending. That is DC swamp speak for Social Security, Medicare, increasing amounts of veteran spending, all of the things that are on autopilot. All of that basically adds up to the revenues we bring into the Treasury, which I think is somewhere around $4 trillion. All of the other stuff, the Department of Defense, the Department of Education, the Department of Justice, HHS, this building, Congress, Senate, the White House, the FAA, all of that is borrowed money. Every penny of it is borrowed money. How can we look at our kids and grandkids straight in the face and say, we're not killing the country that was given to us? Because we are. And my colleagues on the other side of the aisle always blame it on tax policy. I will absolutely, as I said in the Budget Committee, have any conversation about tax policy my friends on the other side of the aisle want to have. But what I will not allow my colleagues on the other side of the aisle to do is blame deficits on tax policy. In 2022, 19.6% of the American GDP was sent back to Washington, D.C., the highest level in history. It ain't a revenue problem. It's not. We have always, since we've had tax policy, been somewhere around 17.5% of American GDP, that is everything we earn, comes back here to Washington. This year, last year, I think it was about 17.5%. It peaked, 2022 came back down. So you got all that money, and yet we can't fund all of the stuff we've promised or that we decide to do. I had friends, people back home, constituents say, why'd you vote no on a bill for ALS? Why'd you vote no on a bill for cancer? Well, I'm a cancer survivor. I've had friends with ALS. I voted no because we don't have any money. I voted no because we're lying to the American people. Both sides of the aisle, but with all due respect, particularly my colleagues on the other side of the aisle, who just blame it on tax policy and then ignore spending like drunken sailors. And on our watch, the footnote in history for my tenure in the House of Representatives is going to be that I destroyed the country. I mean, I'm proud that I voted no for most of this garbage. But for this moment in time, every member of this body, your legacy, your tombstone is going to be that you destroyed the United States of America, the greatest country in the history of the world. That's going to be the legacy of this House of Representatives, of the next House of Representatives, of last Congress's House of Representatives. Because we utterly refuse to responsibly do our job. $34 trillion of debt. When I ran for office in 2018, it was $21 trillion. I've been here for 5 years. 5 years. And it's gone up $13 trillion. I've voted against virtually every penny of it. But that doesn't make me feel any good because we're still up $13 trillion. And I would just say to my colleagues on both sides of the aisle, what are we going to do about it? Have another study? Put together another working group? Or what if maybe we actually did our damn job, set a cap, and spent under that? Novel concept, I know, that every business, every nonprofit, every family in America largely has to contemplate. But we're going to have legislation that is going to come before us in 2 weeks. You know why? Because the government funding is going to expire in 2 weeks. Now again, my colleagues on the other side of the aisle have been driving an agenda through the administration, the Senate, my colleagues here in this chamber, that spends more money, regulates the heck out of the entire country, shutting down the internal combustion engine, leaving us with wide open borders, letting immigrants out without bail, making our streets unsafe, perpetuating endless wars, driving up inflation. My Senate Republican colleagues, unfortunately, too often want to join with them. On the bill, the Ukraine bill, Taiwan, Israel funding has no border security, is unpaid for, has no mission. 22 Republicans decided that would be a good bill to join. With friends like these, as they say. So we'll get a bill in 2 weeks to keep the lights on and keep funding government, something most of my constituents question. Most of my constituents come up to me and say, shut down the border or shut down the government. They're sick of open borders. They're sick of fentanyl deaths. They're sick of their livestock getting out. They're sick of having people break into their homes. They're sick of their schools getting filled, their hospitals getting filled, their jails getting filled. They're sick of what's happening to their country. But here's the thing. My Republican colleagues rightly, properly impeached Alejandro Mayorkas for a total failure to carry out his duty, a total failure to faithfully execute the laws of the United States, lying to me under oath in a House Judiciary Committee hearing, lying to the American people about whipping Haitian migrants. The House of Representatives, led by Republicans, impeached for the second time in history a sitting cabinet secretary. That's not a bright moment for our country, but it was the right thing to do. It'll go over to the Senate, they'll hold a trial. He almost certainly will not be convicted. I don't know if it'll be party line vote, takes 67 votes to do it. But here's the thing. That's not enough. It's not enough for Republicans to send over a impeachment and then walk away, say we did what we could. It's not enough to pass H.R. 2, the strongest border security bill I've ever seen move off of this floor or in any chamber in Capitol Hill. It's not enough to do that. The American people want results. So here's the question. When we have a funding bill that comes before us in 2 weeks, there'll be two versions of it probably. Big omnibus spending bill, multiple minibus bills, a continuing resolution. Are my Republican colleagues going to agree to continue to fund the government that is at war with them? Are they going to fund the salary of Alejandro Mayorkas when Alejandro Mayorkas was just impeached, has been lying to them and endangering the American people with wide open borders? Because that is the power of the purse that James Madison eloquently stated in Federalist 58 is our power to check the executive branch. That's why we have it. Are we going to defund any of that? Are we going to withhold that funding for a secretary run rogue? Are we going to keep allowing funding to be used for the education of illegal aliens flooding our country? For the $53 million that was funded in New York? I don't know if it's all state money, local money, federal money, whatever. All I know is $53 million, like cards going out to illegal aliens, illegal aliens in schools, illegal aliens in hospitals, illegal aliens in emergency rooms. We're the ones left holding the bag, in Texas in particular, but also New York, also Chicago. Are we going to keep funding it? Now, every Republican should have to answer that question if you're going to go campaign on saying that you're trying to secure the border. Why are you funding this? We know our Democrat colleagues don't give a rip, and they want borders to be wide open to flood the zone with people from all over the world. There's no other reason for it. There is no other defense for it. It's a total abuse of asylum laws, total abuse of parole laws, total abuse of exceptions to the rule that you're supposed to have operational control of the border. We all know that. Anyone who can read knows that. But our Democratic colleagues are totally fine with wide open borders, endangering the American people, endangering migrants, empowering cartels, empowering China. What will Republicans do about it? Pass an impeachment bill? Good. Pass H.R. 2? Good. Funding the very mechanisms that are at war with the people of Texas and the American people? Bad. Stop doing it. Stop allowing those funds to be abused. Stop funding the NGOs that are working in consort with the cartels and the people in Mexico to move people up all the way down from the Darien Gap, all the way up through the Northern Triangle, through Mexico, into the United States. Stop funding them. It's fact. We see it. Reporters have embedded with them. We know it's true. And we're funding the United Nations $12.5 billion a year. $12.5 billion to the United Nations. This body, including Republicans, are voting to fund. Why? That same United Nations is working with NGOs to move people up from the Darien Gap all the way through Mexico to here. That same United Nations is funding Hamas. Oh, everybody says, Chip, you must give the $17 billion to Israel. Well, why would I vote for $17 billion for Israel while we're funding our enemies, their enemies? That's what we're doing. Stop doing that. Stop funding our own enemies. We're funding the mechanisms of the Inflation Reduction Act. We're funding billions going to China. We're funding billions going to China through Iran and the sale of oil. We're funding all of those operations. We're empowering all of those operations that are acting in direct opposition to our well-being. We're funding the implementation of the liquefied natural gas ban on exports. We're funding the implementation of the rule that's going to require that EVs be 2/3 of our fleet by 2032, that will kill the American family with higher priced cars that are less functional. We're funding that. We're funding the FBI that's out of control. We're funding all of the intelligence bureaucracy that is using the FISA laws designed to target our enemies to spy on the American people. We're funding that. We're funding the EPA's natural gas tax and methane rule, destroying access to reliable energy. We're funding the EPA's power plant rules aimed at knocking off coal and natural gas power plants, making us wholly dependent on wind and sun for energy when you don't always have wind and sun. We're funding the Internal Revenue Service, doling out billions in those IRA tax credits to the corporations I described before. We're funding the World Health Organization, which is continuing to advance policies in direct conflict to our own well-being. We're funding the United Nations Relief and Work Agency for Palestinian refugees, which I described before as funding Hamas and funding our enemies. Totally fine. Don't worry about it. We'll go campaign against Hamas. We'll go campaign that Israel's great, but we're going to fund them. That might be the one we don't fund. Because now everybody's head is exploding, because even though some of us introduced legislation 3 years ago to stop it, and everybody ignored it, now they find out, oh yeah, lo and behold, these people were actually there. They're actually employed by the United Nations. They're actually working with Hamas to attack Israel. October 7th exposed what we already knew. But we were too stupid, lazy, and unprincipled, to actually do something about it instead of funding it. We're funding a pro-China, anti-Israel United Nations Human Rights Council. Why? We're $34 trillion in debt, and yet we're going to write that check. I literally don't understand it. It just makes no sense. Oh, Chip, bipartisanship. You got to understand, you don't have the Senate, you don't have the White House. Just say no and go explain it to the American people. Hi, American. Do you think that we should borrow money that we don't have, indebting your children into the future, weakening the dollar, increasing inflation so we can fund our enemies and Israel's enemies, while also wanting you to borrow more money to fund Israel to fight the enemies that you're funding? That's what we do. That's what Republicans do. That's what Democrats do. Republicans at least try. That's the difference. We're going to fund an ATF rule banning up to 40 million pistol braces. We complain about it. We talk about how bad it is, but we're going to fund it. We're going to fund the ATF rule massively expanding background checks. We're going to fund the Department of Education's student loan cancellation schemes, despite the Supreme Court ruling against them. We're going to keep funding it. We'll keep writing the check. We're going to fund the public health agencies like the CDC and the NIH, the FDA, all still unaccountable for shutting down the greatest economy in the history of the world, foisting $8 trillion of debt, sticking our kids in the corner of the classrooms, undermining our economic prosperity, destroying healthcare freedom. We're going to keep funding them. Hold a couple of hearings, walk away. We're going to keep funding the Department of Veterans Affairs vaccine mandate. I have a bill, but who cares if I have a bill? So what? Pass a bill. What, so I can go campaign that I had a bill? Who cares? We should ban the ability to introduce legislation until we actually stop funding all this stuff. So people can't hide behind passing a bill, saying I did something, when you didn't. I passed a bill to fund a new position at the State Department that will go after and stop bad things from happening. No, you didn't. You funded another bureaucrat who hates you. You funded another bureaucrat who wants to undermine your way of life. That's what you just funded. And it costs more money. We're going to fund, when we vote in 2 weeks, to fund the government, because people will say, you got to fund the government, can't shut the government down, all the usual stuff. We're going to fund chief diversity officers at the Department of Defense and throughout government. We're going to fund abortion tourism. We're going to fund transgender surgeries. Yeah, your tax dollars, I'm sorry, we've already established, your borrowed dollars are going to go to fund all those things that you don't even want. The vast majority of Americans don't want that stuff. We're going to do it. We're going to fund endless arrays of bureaucrats who are at odds with your way of life. The Democratic Party wants to end, as much as humanly possible, Western civilization as we know it. They want to undermine our way of life. They're totally good with wide open borders. They're totally good with endangering the American people. Totally good with indebting our children and grandchildren with trillions of dollars of debt. Totally good with advancing radical energy policies that will result in energy poverty and the destruction of human life as we know it. Totally fine with unreliable power. Totally fine empowering China and our enemies in the name of unicorn energy. They're totally fine with an empowered government being used against the American people. All of that stuff. And I will say this in response to the chattering class here on the Hill that are attacking Speaker Johnson, or for that matter, were attacking Speaker McCarthy for the dysfunction of the House. This Republican-led House is the only institution in the world right now standing up and yelling, "Stop," to quote William F. Buckley. We're the only institution in the world right now standing against a radical leftist agenda. Yes, I gave a speech saying name one thing because I want to get victories. I want to stand up and stop the radical left. Well, we did something. We impeached Alejandro Mayorkas, and that's good. We did something last year in passing H.R. 2, but we ought to hold the Senate accountable and make them come to the table with us and stop what this administration is doing with tyrannical executive overreach, endangering the American people with wide open borders. We ought to use the power of the purse to stop funding 1, 2, 10, 50 of the things that I just described. We should use that power of the purse in 2 weeks. We shouldn't run scared. We should embrace the caps that were passed last year in the so-called Fiscal Responsibility Act. Wasn't as good as I wanted, but there's caps. Why are we running away from the caps? Why would we honor side deals that were done behind closed doors, which even the Democrat Appropriations Chairwoman acknowledged in the Rules Committee were literally not in the text of the FRA? And in fact, she voted against the FRA because those side deals were not in the text. Why would we walk away from that? We have the ability to constrain spending by about $100 billion less than what the powers that be want to try to negotiate over in the Senate. If we passed a continuing resolution for the rest of this year funding government, it would be at 1564, $1.564 trillion. If we advance the minibus using the side deals that the Senate wants us to do, it'll be $1.66 trillion. It's $100 billion we could save. $100 billion you take away from the bureaucracy that's at war with your way of life. That's what Republicans should do. But the reason we won't, most likely, we'll keep trying, the reason we won't is because of what I started this conversation with. The defense industrial complex. Everybody in this town that says we're going to die if we don't fund defense, if we don't have FISA out there, or an abused FISA, because the intel community is out there wanting to collect all the information under the sun, including against American citizens. It will be, as Dwight Eisenhower said, in the councils of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex. That was 1961. That was 63 years ago. He was correct. The general that helped us defeat Nazi Germany, that led us at D-Day, who became president of the United States, foretold 63 years ago what we're seeing right now, that we will hide behind defense, we will hide behind the intelligence community, and we will do that to indebt our children and our grandchildren. In the name of security, we will undermine our security. We will not have the money to defend ourselves, much less the world. We will not be able to stand side by side with Israel because we're not going to have a country left to stand next to them. We have the opportunity as Republicans to stand athwart a radical left that wants to kill our country. We should do it. We should do it proudly, and we should run on it. We should stop dancing. We have caps in place, use them. We have policies we know we need to achieve, fight for them. We won't get them all. We may only get a few. But for the love of everything holy, fight for them, because the other side wants to take away your way of life, is destroying this country. That's what's happening. We have a duty to stand up for the people who sent us here. I embrace what Jake Sherman is saying. I embrace what the Capitol Hill reporters are saying. Because when we stand up and yell stop, to stand athwart the massive power and scope of government that is strangling the prosperity and the well-being of the American people, I am proud of it. On that point, I am proud of what we've been doing under both speakers this Congress, because we've been having the debate that needs to be had on this side of the aisle. We've been having the debate the American people want us to have. Unfortunately, we get no help from our colleagues on the other side of the aisle who are beholden to a radical left vision while they just allow America to slip through their fingers like sand, or our fingers, while we watch it unfold. I hope that when we come back from this recess, we will take up the mantle, stand athwart the tyranny of the radical left, band together, stop spending money we don't have, stop funding the tyranny against our way of life, stop allowing open borders, stop allowing our streets to be dangerous, stop funding wars without a mission, with endless borrowing, Stop doing everything we campaigned against. Every single person that campaigned on this side of the aisle campaigned against those things. Stop continuing them. That's our duty. That's our calling. And if we do that, we might be able to pass down this country to our kids and our grandkids when our country turns 250 years old in just over 2 years. Are we going to be able to look at them and say that they've inherited a free country? When those 56 men walked out of Independence Hall signing their death warrant, we praise that every July 4th. Are we going to honor it? Or are we just going to use it as a parade symbol on July 4th? Are we going to honor the lives of the men that stormed the beaches at Normandy that was led by Dwight Eisenhower, who foretold what we're now doing with the defense industrial complex? Are we going to stand up and stop spending money we don't have and preserve liberty? Are we going to do that? Or are we just going to talk about them every June 6th about how great it was that they stormed the beach and walked into a wall of bullets? We can't go around and help the world if this country isn't strong. I keep hearing Ronald Reagan being raised up as like, oh, look, you know, he went over and he stood in front of the Berlin Wall. You bet he did. Yes, we had funded activities around the world in Afghanistan and otherwise. First of all, we didn't have 100% debt to GDP, which we do now. We weren't $34 trillion in debt. But second of all, and importantly, peace through strength meant peace through strength. Peace through strength, not peace through endless wars, not peace through spying on Americans in the name of intelligence gathering against your enemies, not peace through unlimited borrowing, making our country financially insolvent. That is not what that meant. And too many people in this town are totally fine hiding behind defense, hiding behind intelligence in order to undermine our well-being as a country in the false name of security. We should stop that. We should make this country secure by actually doing our job. With that, Mr. Speaker, I will yield back and give the floor to my colleague from Texas, the Honorable Mr. Green.